During each period in the history of music, composers employed distinctive textural features. We can generally state that a distinguishing texture type predominates each era. The characteristic texture type of a Renaissance period is polyphonic texture. Since harmony was largely described in the term of the relationship of voices, it is natural that a texture of a multiple voice would be the result. Renaissance composers placed great value on the independence of line, although they use imitation of the beginning of the most phrases. The rise of the figured bass concept, which is basically an accompaniment technique, signaled the beginning of interest in homophonic texture in Baroque period. Both polyphonic and homophonic texture were used, but seldom in the same composition or movement. Texture in Baroque period were generally denser than those of Renaissance period, and the rise of the instrumental music allowed for wider ranges. During the classical period, homophony became the standard texture, and composers engaged in much greater contrast of the range and density than in Baroque period. The Romantic period maintained the predominance of homophonic texture, but with increased range and density. Texture in the Romantic period became more complex and often shifted suddenly to emotional effect. Composers of post-Romantic period generally maintained the texture that the Romantic period composers used, but with the Impressionists, texture took on new significance. Many Impressionist work depend heavily on texture for their effect. Typical texture type of the Impressionist period are expanded monophonic texture, parallelism, and homophonic texture. In the 20th century, no typical texture type has prevailed. Constant texture change characterized many styles. Composers who choose to imitate the style of previous periods, in neoclassicism, for example, typically imitate the texture as well. In other styles, the fabric of music explodes into small fragments, and textural continuity breaks down. Popular music is nearly all homophonic texture. Much of the jazz is also homophonic. However, the simultaneous improvisation of some jazz musicians creates true polyphony, with considerable independence of line.